Are Israel and the United States preparing to resume the fighting? Donald Trump is increasing the economic pressure on Iran. In a dramatic statement, the Revolutionary Guard said that they defeated the enemy and are ready for the next round. And then, in the Strait of Hormuz, the Revolutionary Guards attacked 3 cargo ships inside the strait and took control of them. So right now, this is probably Iran's last chance for negotiations because Donald Trump once again extended the ceasefire. And now, we will wait another 3 to 5 days to understand who exactly are we talking to in Iran. I'm serious. The president was not joking when he said that they are all dead. 1 million people are making decisions in Iran, and that's why they are so confident in themselves. So, while the negotiation table in Islamabad is shaking, the field is signaling maximum readiness for a very broad military confrontation. And I mean very broad. The IDF launched a lightning operation before the ceasefire in Lebanon took effect. IDF forces carried out a foot ambush 12 kilometers deep inside Lebanon. And we will soon bring you all the information about the dramatic IDF raid against the Hezbollah terrorist organization. And after a heavy blow, Hezbollah took just seconds before the ceasefire. This terrorist organization increased its attacks against the IDF forces in Lebanon. And the Houthis in Yemen, they are back. And they are threatening to drag the entire Middle East into escalation. I'm Yair Pinto, and with me is Mati Shoshani, and together we are boots on the ground. We bring you the full truth about what's happening in Israel and also the full truth about what's happening in our neighborhood, the Middle East. And this is the opening of day 54 of the war Roaring Lion, or by its American name, Epic Fury. So, while in Tehran the Revolutionary Guards held a victory parade over the United States, I'm not joking, they held a victory parade declaring that they won the United States of America. And this was a huge military parade with missiles on trucks in the streets, the whole charade of the Islamic Republic, the kind of parade that only dark regimes hold. In a statement marking the founding day of the Revolutionary Guards in Iran, the Revolutionary Guards boasted about the honored waves of missiles and drone attacks that they carried out, claiming that they caused the collapse of America and the Israeli infrastructure in this region, claiming that they destroy Israel, and also claimed the whole world is afraid of them. According to what they say, and they are threatening an attack beyond all the imagination in the next round of fighting. After weeks of war and a few days without fighting, it is already possible to outline the temporary result. The war did not end in a clear victory, and the next stage already looks fairly predictable. According to reports in the United States, Trump extended the ceasefire after frantic discussions at the White House. During these discussions, he asked whether to resume the bombings. Fox reported that the extension is for 3 to 5 days, so that Tehran can return with a consolidated answer. The president was nevertheless warned about an Iranian attempt to just buy time and stall. Trump is giving negotiations another chance, while the naval blockade and the economic pressure are deepening the tension and increasing the risk of regional escalation. Iran interprets this as weakness. They think this is weakness and they are hardening their positions. A news agency that is affiliated with the Revolutionary Guards in Iran is presenting 5 implications for what comes next. The claims that the American move is part of the deception tactic designed to preserve military economic pressure even under the cover of a ceasefire. And in Iran, it looks like they're trying to recover quickly. The Revolutionary Guards announced that 2,000 electrical infrastructures bombed by Israel have been already repaired. And is everybody preparing for the renewal of the fighting? The United States is deploying Ukrainian interception systems in Saudi Arabia and stopping Iranian oil tankers. Iran claims it is restoring the electrical infrastructure and warns against the blockade. And the scale of the destruction in Iran is being exposed. Thousands of buildings were damaged. The economy is on the verge of collapse. Iranian citizens are estimating the damages of this war for the first time, and radar images show the widespread destruction, which also indicates that most of the strikes were not as surgical as reported. The economic consequences now threaten to completely paralyze the country. Iran attacked oil tankers in the Strait of Hormuz. The Revolutionary Guards attacked 3 cargo ships in the Strait of Hormuz and took control of them. And according to the Revolutionary Guards, a ship sailing under the Liberian flag, a ship sailing under the Panamanian flag, and a Greek-owned container ship were attacked. The organization claimed that they were stopped because they were operating without the required permits and had carried out manipulation of the navigation systems. The United Kingdom Maritime Trade Operations Agency, UKMTO, said it received a report from a cargo ship in the Oman area saying that it had come under fire from a boat belonging to Iran's Revolutionary Guards. According to the report, significant damage was caused to the command bridge. And according to the agency, no fires broke out and the crew was not injured. The Lebanese newspaper, El Akbar, which is affiliated with the Hezbollah terrorist organization, quoted a knowledgeable military source, end quote, in the Yemeni capital Sana'a, which is under the control of the Houthi rebels, and he claimed that the American show of force in the Red Sea will not continue, and he added that he expects a return of the attacks, like those suffered by the American aircraft carriers and warships in the Red Sea and in the Arabian Sea, while the Houthis were supporting the Gaza Strip. The spokesperson for the Iranian Foreign Ministry announced that his country accepted the United States' proposal to extend the ceasefire for the sake of continuing the dialogue. However, he has not yet confirmed that the Iranians will arrive for talks in Pakistan. What's going to happen? We will find out in the coming days. But in addition, in Iran, instead of trying to come to negotiations, they're raising the level of threats. A media outlet affiliated with the Revolutionary Guards published a detailed mapping of undersea internet cables and cloud infrastructure in the Persian Gulf, hinting that they are legitimate targets, according to Iran. And the Gulf states are highly dependent on this infrastructure. The report comes against the backdrop of the Iranian attacks during the war against Amazon facilities in the United Arab Emirates and in Bahrain. And French President Emmanuel Macron ordered that another French soldier was killed in Hezbollah attacks in southern Lebanon. This is 4 days after the deadly shooting attack in Lebanon. And then the Houthis declared that Yemen will not remain neutral in the Middle East conflict and are preparing to turn the Red Sea, the Arabian Sea, and even the Indian Ocean into a war zone. The American show of force will not continue. End quote by the Houthis. I'm Yair Pinto, with me is Mati Shoshani, and together we are boots on the ground. We bring you the full truth about what's happening in Israel. And this is day 53 of the war against the Revolutionary Guards, which is the head of the crumbling axis of evil in the Middle East. And just before we begin, I want to call on you to keep spreading the truth. Share our content with as many people as possible. Click on the subscribe button. Most importantly, do not forget to look for me, Yair Pinto, and for Mati Shoshani on our social media platforms to get the full behind-the-scene perspective of what it's like to live in Israel under this war. Our senior Middle East affairs correspondent, Mati Shoshani, first of all, happy Independence Day. How are you doing? I hope you had a lot of steaks and barbecued this day, as the tradition all across Israel is to basically eat a lot, stay in the sun, go outside to national parks, and celebrate our 78th independence.
Yes. We're keeping up the tradition of bird sacrifices on the holidays. I definitely kept that tradition going and strong today. Some serious grilling going on.
Great to hear, Mati. So let me know, are we really getting closer to a renewal of the fighting between Israel and the United States against Iran? Or is this a real chance to negotiations? I mean, what's happening? Looks like nobody cares about anything.
Well, it's a bit of a confusing situation. I'd say if I had to put this on a chart of like what's most likely, it is very likely that Israel will go back to fighting in Lebanon before we go back in Iran. I think that could be hours away, realistically speaking. The Iran situation is a little more complicated. Trump extended their deadline. He extended the deadline because the Iranians refused to come to the negotiations. And it's not exactly clear if they're able to negotiate with one voice or if there's a decision within the Iranian government on what the next steps are. So he extended the deadline all the way to the beginning of next week. Is there a chance that the Americans will have to attack Iranian targets? It's possible. The Iranians have been slowly escalating their attacks on ships and also trying to break free from the blockade repeatedly since the U.S. imposed the blockade last week. So I think it's a not very high chance that we'll see full-on conflict. There is a chance that we're going to see limited fighting, as we have in recent days, where the Iranians try to use speedboats to attack vessels traveling through the Strait of Hormuz, and the United States has to defend them. And the United States has stopped some of the Iranian shadow fleet as it tries to travel. There's a chance that some of it could escalate. I'd say the really complicated and concerning thing here isn't just the fact that it's not entirely clear where we're going, which is, of course, the uncertainty is unpleasant for everyone involved, but the mere fact when you look at the basics of it, there isn't a single voice coming out of Iran on what they want to do and what their end goal is over here. I mean, over the weekend, we've heard, over the week, I should say, we've heard an escalation of these different voices coming out of Iran. The foreign minister says one thing, the RGC says another thing. The supreme leader, excuse me, who we don't know if he's actually speaking or someone else is speaking on his behalf, or someone else is speaking on his behalf. And it seems like there is at least 4 different factions speaking for different parts of the Iranian government. And that leads us to believe that it might be very hard to reach an agreement. This might be, and there's a lot of rumors floating on this topic. One of the reasons the U.S. extended the deadline all the way to the beginning of next week. I'd say realistically, there just isn't much of an incentive for anyone to go back to fighting right now because it doesn't get us any more substantial. More bombing missions won't change the situation in the Strait of Hormuz, and more attacks from the Iranians won't change the fact that the U.S. is blocking their ports and controlling the air, the sea, the land around them. So it sort of leaves us in the same position. That's why I said the most volatile position right now is one for Israel versus Lebanon, and of course the Houthis in the Red Sea. Those are the 2 most immediate kind of responses that we could see happening if things don't move forward with the Iranians.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about these 3 ships in the Strait of Hormuz that were attacked by Iranian small boats. What does this mean? What's the current situation with the sailors? Are these ships under the Iranian control? Just give us an explanation of what's happening there.
Yeah, so there's a really big problem that has to do with trying to really close off the Strait of Hormuz and protect ships traveling through from, let's call it Iranian piracy. First of all, let's talk about the nature of these attacks. The Iranians have speedboats. The speedboats are the size of a car, maybe a big car, a van. And on them, you don't need many, many people. A handful of terrorists with a handful of weapons is enough to take over or cause damage to ships. And the Iranians have been trying to do this time and time again. What are the Americans doing to try to stop them? Every time they try to do what they've done today, which is attack ships traveling through the Strait of Hormuz, they have A-10 Warthogs in the air. They have drones in the air. They have other aerial vessels in the air, and they have a lot of ships in the sea. But even so, the Iranians have spent many, many years creating these small caves on the coastline of Iran from which these small speedboats can exit and quickly attack ships traveling through the Strait of Hormuz. Again, they knew this was coming. They knew a blockade of Iran and the Strait of Hormuz was on the table, and they prepared for this scenario exactly. And what we saw now in recent days is exactly that. They try again and again and again, and sometimes they succeed, like they did today, to cause damage to ships traveling through. But Yael, this isn't a one-sided combat. Mm-hmm. The Americans have done exactly the same thing to the Iranians. It's just a little more complicated. For the Iranians, essentially anyone that isn't an Iranian ship can be a legitimate target because their goal is to put fear in the hearts of people. For the Americans, they have to figure out which one of the many ships that is trying to travel through is part of the Iranian shadow fleet. And they're obviously not waving an Iranian flag or playing the Iranian national anthem when they sail through the Strait of Hormuz. They have an Indian flag on them. They have a Pakistani flag. They have a some kind of island flag on them. So it's quite complicated to try to really figure out which ship is a Shadow Fleet ship and which isn't. And this is the cat and mouse game that's being played right now. The Iranians are trying to jeopardize or harm ships traveling through, and the Americans are trying to stop the Iranian Shadow Fleet from traveling through.
So, Mati, when we're connecting all these threats from, first of all, from Hezbollah in Lebanon, then the Houthis in Yemen, and then the fact that an IRGC senior was seen in Iraq coordinating the militias that are affiliated with Iran, do we see like major preparation to use all the proxies again against Israel and also against the second shipping lane of the Bab el-Mandeb, all the area around Yemen?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, the way the Iranians operate is not as a conventional army. I mean, they are the master puppeteer, and they have at the end of every string, they have a proxy force that is meant to cause harm on their behalf. It's the Houthis in the Red Sea, it's their ballistic missiles, it's Hezbollah, it's Hamas, it's terrorist cells around the world. That's how they operate. And they've been very, very clear that their goal here is to try to maximize damage through their proxies. And especially now, especially after they've taken a beating when it comes to their ballistic missile capabilities, when it comes to the question or the ability to cause harm in direct military conflict, their only option right now to try and shift the military situation, shift the geopolitical situation, or the power balance, or put any kind of substantial pressure on the United States or its allies, the only way to do that is by using proxies. Who are those proxies? You said it. Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Houthis in the Red Sea, or sort of the doomsday scenario to try to go after ships traveling through, or in the Hezbollah case, Israel's northern communities. That's how they operate. That's how they've always operated. And this is how they go about business. And our goal as Israel, of course, the United States, is to try and prevent them from doing that. And for the most part, it's been successful. That's important to state. We've been very, very good at pushing back on their ability to use the proxies and utilize them. Very effective in weakening their proxies and their ability to move munitions, training, and money to those same people. And the goal is, of course, to continue doing that again and again until those proxies no longer exist and are no longer funded by the Iranian regime.
Yeah, definitely, Mati. So I would say happy independence to you, your family, and just if you have one last word to say, why is this a very significant Independence Day for you?
Yeah, I'd say it as it is every year. God has sustained, God has protected, God has stood with the people of Israel in the land of Israel, not just the Jewish people, everyone in this region, time and time again throughout history, and that continues this year. We've seen hardship, we've seen pain, and yet we are here, and that is a sign of God's faithfulness, and it should be a sign to everyone around the world of how faithful God is to his people, and by extension, to everyone who calls on his name.
Amen. Well, thank you very much, Mati. Go back to grilling and eating and celebrating with your family.
Thank you, Yael.
And to all of you that are joining us just now, we are TBN Israel. That's Mati Shoshani. I'm Yair Pinto. Make sure to look for us on social media platforms, and also make sure to hit the subscribe button on TBN Israel on our YouTube channel. We report twice a day throughout this war to let you know what's happening in Israel, and so you have all the information you need in order to pray for the situation. And now, we invite you to take part in something real, something that is rooted in this land and in our hearts. The Rebuild Israel campaign continues, bringing life back to Israel's northern communities. Along Israel's northern border, an area that is marked by war, displacement, and loss, we are now planting an apple orchard, not as a symbol for a single moment, but as part of a long-term commitment to rebuild what was damaged. So this orchard is more than just agriculture. It creates jobs for local families. It helps communities return and rebuild. And it sends a clear message to the people of Israel: you are not alone. When you donate, you're not just giving, you are rebuilding. Your support puts trees in the ground, restores livelihoods, and transforms land scarred by war into a land that grows again. This is how renewal takes root. This is how Israel rebuilds after war. So join us in restoring the North and strengthening the future of the land of Israel. Go now to tbn.org/rebuild Israel or call 800-804-7895. Again, that's 800-804-7895, or you can go to the website at tbn.org/rebuild Israel. Help us rebuild the northern communities that were attacked by the Hezbollah terrorist organization, and to show that we are here to stay. Let's get back to the news. A vessel was hit tonight near western Iran after another report of gunfire at a cargo ship that had already come to a stop in the water. And almost at the same time, the Revolutionary Guards confirmed that they attacked 3 ships in the Strait of Hormuz, and they claimed that they had taken control of 2 of them, and once again shifted the maritime arena from economic pressure to direct operational friction. So is the extension of the ceasefire buying time for a deal, or simply creating a short corridor on the way to the next round of fire? Because this is how Day 54 of the Roaring Lion War, or by its American name, Epic Fury, comes to a close. It was a day with no signed agreement and no real breakthrough. But another layer was added to the ladder of escalation. At sea, Iran is signaling that it has no intention of backing down. In the air, the IDF is projecting immediate readiness. At the White House, Trump is stretching the rope a little farther, but he's not letting go of it. And in the north of Israel, Hezbollah is reminding everybody that even when all eyes are on Hormuz, Lebanon has not gone quiet for a moment. Let us begin at sea, because that is where the heartbeat of this day was the strongest. The Revolutionary Guards confirmed that they attacked 3 cargo ships in the Strait of Hormuz area. And according to the statements from Tehran, one of the ships was Greek-owned, and the other 2 ships belonged to an international shipping company, one sailing under the Panamanian flag and one under the Liberian flag. Iran claimed that the vessels tried to cross the strait, manipulated their navigation systems, operated without the required approvals, and that 2 of them were even taken into Iranian territorial waters. And at the same time, the British Maritime Security Center received reports of gunfire from a Revolutionary Guards boat towards a cargo ship in the Oman area, and of a significant damage to the command bridge. There were no casualties, but there was damage. And there was also a message. Iran is effectively telling the world, if you close the sea on us, we will close your calm at sea. That matters not only because of the ships themselves, it matters because of the method. Iran did not fire today in order to sink a fleet. It fired in order to establish an equation. An Iranian ship is seized by the United States Navy. So, from the perspective of Revolutionary Guards, the response is tanker for tanker. That was also said explicitly by Ibrahim Raisi, the spokesman for the Iranian Parliament's National Security and Foreign Policy Committee. He did not speak about diplomacy, not about mediation, and not about de-escalation. He chose the oldest and most dangerous formula in this region: an eye for an eye, a tanker for a tanker. And when that happens in the heart of Hormuz, it is no longer just a harsh quote. It is a doctrine of action. And we need to understand that Iran is trying to do here something, not only to hurt, not only to retaliate, but to restore for itself psychological control over the most important maritime route in the region. For days, Trump has been trying to sell a picture of total blockade, complete American control, $500 million a day lost by Iran, an Iranian fleet sunk, and the Iranian economy is being strangled. And today, instead of answering him at a press conference, the Revolutionary Guards answered with boats, with gunfire, with ships that they seized, and with declarations of victory. That is the difference between the two sides right now. The Americans are selling pressure. The Iranians are selling endurance. The big question is which of the two is more convincing to the other side. And that brings us to Trump's dramatic announcement just before the deadline expired, and after the Iranians made it clear that it would not come to talks in Pakistan as long as the naval blockade remained in place. The President of the United States announced that he was extending the ceasefire, not by a day, not with a clear end hour, and not with any orderly timetable. He simply froze the next step, left the blockade in place, and announced that he was waiting for a unified Iranian proposal. In his wording, this is an extension at Pakistan's request, and because the Iranian government is divided. In simpler language, Trump is saying, I'm not taking my foot off the neck, but I'm also not giving the order to bomb tonight. That's a move that, on the one hand, looks measured. On the other hand, is dangerous. Because without a new deadline, without a transparent time frame, and with a blockade continuing, a gray interim period has now been created. That kind of ambiguity can work in favor of whoever holds more power, but it can also be interpreted as weakness. And that's exactly the debate that's happening now. Some in the American system think that Donald Trump is building legitimacy here for renewed fighting. This is after he can say that he tried everything. In Tehran, they may read this as hesitation. And when Iran smells hesitation, it usually does not calm down. It tests the boundaries. And that explains why today we received a flood of contradictory messages from Iran, all leading to the same place. Iranian Foreign Minister, the spokesman, Baghahi, thanked Pakistan, spoke about diplomacy, but stressed that Iran would use it only when the necessary and logical conditions from its point of view were met. The Iranian state television was far less cautious and said openly that Iran may not recognize the ceasefire that is declared by Donald Trump and will act according to its national interests. An advisor to the Iranian parliament speaker said that the extension of the ceasefire is a deception ahead of a surprise attack. Iranian army commander Amir Hatami threatened that if Iran is attacked again, it will fight to the last drop of blood. And in the same breath, Iran also leaked messages saying that there is a principled willingness for dialogue, but not under pressure and not under humiliation. This is not just contradiction. This is the real picture of the Iranian regime right now. Trump was not wrong when he spoke of divided leadership. Even if he exaggerated and even if he used it as leverage, there is a real gap there between those who want to stop the collision and look for an exit formula and those who see any flexibility towards an agreement as surrender. That's also one of the reasons that the American system believes that the Iranian response is being delayed. Not necessarily because there is nothing to say, but because in Tehran, it still has not been decided who is even authorized to say it on behalf of anybody. And when the political echelon in Tehran does not close the ranks, the Revolutionary Guards once again take the frame. And it does not stop at sea. Today, on the anniversary of the organization's founding, an especially inflammatory statement was published. The Revolutionary Guards boasted of 100 waves of missiles and drone attacks, claimed they had brought about the collapse of the American and the Israeli infrastructure, declared that the enemy had been defeated, and threatened that the next round they would inflict blows beyond our imagination. This is propaganda, obviously, but in the Middle East, propaganda is also an operational tool. It is not meant only to persuade the public at home. It is meant to impose discipline, inject confidence inward, and signal outwardly that this organization is already preparing for the next phase, even if officially there is still a ceasefire at this moment. And against that, Trump continued to run his pressure campaign almost like a field commander on social media. He repeated that Iran is losing $500 million a day because of Hormuz. He wrote that the army had police in Iran and they are complaining that they are not getting paid. He claimed that if he opens Hormuz, there will be no deal unless he blows up the rest of the country and its leaders. After that, he also attacked those who wrote that he came out looking like a fool and insisted that the Strait of Hormuz is blocked and fully controlled by the United States. The problem is that between one post and the next, the maritime reality remains more complicated than a line on the Truth social media network. Ships are being hit, others are changing course, some are managing to slip through. And there is a difference between total control on paper and practical control in a maritime corridor that can ignite the whole region at any moment. And this is where the economic element comes in. United States Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent announced that he's extending for 30 days the sanctions relief on the Iranian and Russian oil because of requests from around 10 countries that were severely hurt by the shortages created around the blockade and the maritime friction. That's a point worth noticing. On the one hand, Washington wants to deepen the chokehold on Iran. On the other hand, it also has to manage the shockwave hitting markets and countries that are hurt by this crisis around the world. In other words, the United States also has limits. It can apply enormous pressure, but it cannot burn the global economic system indefinitely and pretend that there is no price for that. That's also why Bessent tried to puncture the claim that Tehran made $14 billion from the latest developments, calling it a myth. In other words, the Americans today are fighting not only over the sea and not only over the negotiations, they're also fighting over the story. So, this is just a short update. If you guys like what we do and want to see more of TBN Israel, make sure to hit the subscribe button, make sure to share, make sure to hit the like button so that you never miss another update of Boots on the Ground. We are reporting every single day on what's happening here in Israel, and I almost ran out of battery in my microphone, so I had to get a second one. Let's see if this one is connecting. Okay. So again, I'm Yair Pinto. With me is Mati Shoshani. Make sure to look for us on our social media platforms as well. And now, let us move inside Tehran itself, because the picture there is also starting to sharpen. The Iranians are trying to inflict that recent days are a show of resilience. They try to prove that they're in control. And one of the most prominent messages released today was that 2,000 electrical infrastructures that were damaged in the past are now repaired and operational. That's not a small number. And even if not every detail can be immediately verified, the publication itself serves a clear purpose. The regime wants to show its public that it is surviving, that it is repairing, that it is in control, that it's not collapsing. That's what they try to do. But at the same time, a different picture is beginning to emerge from the ground. The scale of the destruction in Iran is becoming increasingly visible. Thousands of structures were damaged. The economy is under heavy strain. There are assessments of extensive damage to civilian and to industrial and also to commercial buildings. And this is alongside the direct damage to the infrastructure and the military facilities. And that matters because a regime can sell endurance for a few days, but it has a much harder time selling normalcy when an entire economy is under choking and the pressure, and the citizens begin to measure the war through their wallets, electricity, and transport, and also reconstruction. That also connects to the reports that the United States had deployed Ukrainian interception systems at the Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia to better deal with the drone threat. This is the technical detail, but it says a great deal. It means that not only is a target bank that is being prepared for another possible strike, but also that an improved defensive layer is being built for the possibility that Iran or its proxies will try to reopen the campaign with waves of drones. That's not the deployment of a symbol, it is the deployment of a working tool. And when an army starts bringing its tools like these into the arena, it is signaling that it is not continuing and counting on for a long calm. They prepare for the resumption of the fighting. The same is true for Israel. Here, Prime Minister Netanyahu said today from an Iron Dome battery that Israel is ready for every scenario, in defense and also in offense. The Chief of Staff, Eyal Zamir, went even further. He said that the IDF is preserving high readiness and is prepared to return immediately and powerfully to the fighting on all fronts. That's a heavy statement, not only because it was made publicly, but because it connects everything into one whole: Gaza, Lebanon, Iran, and every arena that could flare together. In other words, in Jerusalem, we are no longer looking at this campaign as a collection of separate events. From the IDF's point of view, this is one regional battle, a picture, with several possible openings for renewed fire. And the Northern Front proved that again today. Hezbollah stepped up its attacks against the IDF forces in southern Lebanon. A hostile drone was launched towards the forces, intercepted by the Air Force in the Lebanese skies, and did not cross into the Israeli territory. According to one of the reports, this was already the fourth launch in less than 24 hours towards the IDF positions in the area. And in another incident, it was reported that Hezbollah launched a rocket salvo at an IDF force inside Lebanon and also launched a drone towards the Israeli territory. Alerts were activated in Kfar Yuval and Ma'ayan Baruch. At first, there was a statement saying it was a false alarm, and then a clarification was issued that it was likely an interception of an unmanned aerial vehicle launched from Lebanon. So here too, we have a clear picture. Hezbollah is testing the boundaries of the ceasefire, grinding down the forward defensive lines and trying to create a reality in which fire directed at IDF forces inside southern Lebanon becomes almost routine. But that's not the whole northern story. Today, the IDF is allowed publication of one of the most impressive deep operations of recent days, a raid by Brigade 769 on the village of Debin, about 12 kilometers inside Lebanon before the ceasefire came into effect. This was an operation in which forces from the Sadr Battalion of Givati under Brigade 769 and in cooperation with the air forces carried out a deception maneuver, outflanked the terrorists, surprised Hezbollah in a village that was one of its strongholds in southern Lebanon, struck more than 70 targets, and eliminated more than 20 terrorists. This is a very important detail for today's report because it completes the operational picture. Hezbollah is trying today to show that it is alive, firing, launching, and harassing. The IDF is reminding that it, in the moments just before the ceasefire, it observed a deep, precise, and rapid blow in the heart of an area that it thought was protected. So Hezbollah is not safe. And Binchbel also stayed in the picture. Today, it was reported that a wounded Hezbollah terrorist who had barricaded himself in the area in recent days surrendered to IDF forces in the village of Dabel. He was taken for questioning by Unit 504 of the IDF. And that may sound like a small detail next to ships in Hormuz and an American blockade, but these small details tell a much bigger story. When a Hezbollah man comes out with his hands up and surrenders, that says something both about the tactical pressure on the ground and about what's happening underneath the organization's public declarations. Those who speak on television about steadfastness do not always look the same inside the village when the forces close in on them. And alongside that, the talks between Israel and Lebanon are also entering a sensitive stage. U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee is expected to be part of the American delegation in talks between Israel and Lebanon, and at the same time, Lebanon is expected to ask for a 1-month extension of the ceasefire with Hezbollah. Lebanese President Joseph Aoun has already spoken about contacts to extend the truce, about deploying the Lebanese army to the border, about returning prisoners, and about reconstruction efforts. The meaning is clear. In Lebanon, too, they understand that the current ceasefire is far from stabilizing. It's not sealed, not deep, and not truly resting on quiet. It rests on a delicate balance between American pressure, Israeli caution, and Hezbollah trying to test how much more it can push without taking a broad, punitive operation. And hanging over all of this is also the UNIFIL incident. French President Emmanuel Macron announced today that another French soldier was killed in a Hezbollah attack in southern Lebanon. This is not just another side headline. When French soldiers are being targeted, international pressure on Lebanon and Hezbollah increases, and Israel receives additional legitimacy to argue that southern Lebanon is still far away from real stability. It also sharpens just how volatile the entire area remains. It does not take a salvo on Haifa, Israeli city in the north, to understand that this ceasefire is fragile. One ambush, one drone, one explosion on a route, a road, and the story jumps to another level. And what about Yemen? Because there too, there was no quiet today. The Houthis are once again signaling that they do not intend to remain outside of this game. The message that came out of Sana'a through a newspaper identified with Hezbollah was sharp. The American show of force in the Red Sea will not last. According to that source, there is an expectation that attacks will resume against the American aircraft carrier and also warships in the Red Sea, the Arabian Sea, and even the Indian Ocean. The Houthi leader himself already said that Yemen will not remain neutral in this conflict and that it stands with Iran and the axis of resistance. That says something very important about Day 54. Even when there is no major Houthi attack at this exact moment, the Houthi threat is once again becoming an active part of the strategic calculation. That's also why the arrival of the aircraft carrier Gerald R. Ford, together with the destroyers around it, is so significant. From the American point of view, this is a show of force and preparation for another possible maritime confrontation. From the Houthi point of view, it is a legitimate target. From Iran's point of view, it is another sign that the Americans may have extended the ceasefire, but they have not stepped down from the combat. So the question is no longer whether the Red Sea and Hormuz are connected. They are connected. The question is how quickly one axis can ignite the other. And here, we need to stop for just a moment and understand the structure of this day. On the surface, it looks like a string of updates, a Trump post, an Iranian threat, gunfire at a ship, a message from the United Nations, a drone from Lebanon towards Israel, a raid that the IDF did that was revealed, a Houthi threat, another American assessment. But when you connect all of it, you see something much more organized. Trump extends a ceasefire without a clear end date. Iran responds with non-commitment, threats, and action at sea. The United States leaves the blockade in place, increases economic pressure, and continues preparing the military. Israel does not lower its level of alert, projects immediate readiness, and continues to deepen its hold in southern Lebanon. Hezbollah tests the limits. The Houthis signal a return. And in other words, all the players in the region are acting as if the ceasefire is not the end of the campaign, but merely a small gap between the two chapters. And that brings us back once more to Pakistan, because as long as Islamabad is still trying to mediate, Donald Trump can claim that he's giving diplomacy a chance. As long as Iran has not fully slammed the door, it can claim that it is not rejecting peace, only demanding conditions that it sees as fair. But on the ground, neither side is really acting as if peace is just around the corner. The Iranians are not stopping their threats. The Americans are not stopping the squeeze. and Israel is not stopping its preparations. The United Nations Secretary General today welcomed the extension of the ceasefire and called on all sides to use the momentum and avoid steps that would undermine it. That's a correct statement, but the truth is that the momentum right now does not belong to the United Nations. It belongs to those holding ships, aircrafts, blockades, missiles, and response capabilities. That's why even at the diplomatic level, the campaign is currently being conducted in military language. Every side is testing whether it can reach the table with one more card, one more threat, one more psychological achievement, one better starting position. Day 54 is also sharpened another point. Trump wants to present itself as someone who will not rush into a bad deal, but also as someone who is not being dragged into war with no end. That's a more comfortable political position at home, but an extremely complicated one towards Tehran in Iran, because the Iranians, they may read it as a lack of appetite for a prolonged confrontation and therefore try to drag out time. The Americans know this, which is why inside the administration too, there are those warning that easing pressure will allow Iran to stretch out the negotiations. And in Tehran, that time is an asset. The longer fighting is delayed, the more one can repair, move, extract, hide, reorganize, and prepare the next round under better conditions. And that's exactly why the naval blockade is the center of gravity right now. It is not only a punishment tool, it is not only a symbol, it is what forces Iran to choose between three uncomfortable options: surrender and come to talks under suffocation, respond militarily and risk a broader war, or drag out time through limited friction at sea. For now, it seems to be trying the third path, not to launch a full-scale war, but also not to let the Americans enjoy a clean image of control. Here, in Israel, all of this is being viewed much more simply. If Iran is not softening, if the blockade continues, if the north is slowly burning, if the Houthis are returning to threats, and if the entire resistance axis is preparing for the next round, then, from the point of view of the security establishment, planes need to stay in the air, batteries on high alert, target banks ready, and a clear line maintained. The pause can end very quickly, and that's also why the message from Netanyahu and Zamir today was so sharp. Not dramatic, sharp, ready for every scenario, ready to return immediately, ready in defense and also in offense. This is not a public relations line. It is the language of the situation. The question now is not whether there is still a chance for more talks. There probably is. The question is whether those talks can still stop a process that is already on its way. Because at the bottom line, this day did not look like a day of de-escalation. It looked like a day in which everybody is rearranging their focus and their forces. Trump brought more time, but also kept the military on alert. Iran did not close the door, but sent the Revolutionary Guards back to the sea. Hezbollah continues firing at the IDF forces. The Houthis are already once again marking the Red Sea. And diplomacy, it is still there, but right now, it looks more like a waiting room than an exit plan. The ceasefire has been extended, but almost every major player in the region is behaving as if it is temporary, fragile, and maybe even deceptive. And if all the forces are already standing on the starting line, who will be the first to decide that the waiting is over? We'll see. Keep spreading the truth. Help us by sharing, by subscribing to TBN Israel on YouTube, and by never missing another Boots on the Ground update. You can also look for me, Yair Pinto, and for Mati Shoshani on our social media platforms to get the behind-the-scene look of what's happening in Israel. And above all, you can please pray for the situation, because God has the answers. And today I'm calling you to pray for wisdom to our leaders. They need it, seriously. You can pray for safety to our troops, for comfort to the families of the soldiers that are fighting, and continue to pray for the children of Israel to overcome all these sirens alerts, these rockets. Just a small story before we conclude. In this Independence Day, we didn't have fireworks because of all the rockets that were fired at us in the last 3 years. It's affecting the children, and many people that hear the explosions freak out. And it makes sense because we were used to running to bomb shelters. Let's pray that God will release us from this trauma of these rockets, and that we will have no need to fear rockets anymore because they will not be coming at us. Let's keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem. I want to wish you a happy Israeli Independence Day. God is in control, and He's faithful.